Snow was falling harder than anyone had expected that night. The freezing wind cut through the streets like a knife, making even the strongest people hurry toward the warmth of their homes. But one little boy couldn't run anywhere. He stood outside a small gas station wearing nothing but a thin, oversized t-shirt and worn-out shorts. His tiny feet were completely bare against the icy sidewalk. His lips trembled. His hands shook. Every breath turned into white mist. People walked past him without slowing down. Some avoided eye contact. Others pretended not to notice. One man even muttered, "Someone should call social services." But no one stopped. No one cared. Until one old truck rolled into the parking lot. The engine rumbled as the massive 18-wheeler came to a stop beside the gas station. Behind the wheel sat a tired truck driver named Jack. He had been driving across the country for almost 12 hours. His back ached. His eyes burned from exhaustion. And all he wanted was a hot cup of coffee before finishing the last few miles to his delivery. But the moment he stepped out of the truck, he saw the little boy. And in that single moment, everything changed. Welcome to Heart Nest Stories, where one small act of kindness can change a life forever. If you enjoy emotional stories filled with hope, compassion, and unforgettable life lessons, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and join our growing family. Now, let's begin today's unforgettable story. Jack stared at the little boy for several seconds. The child couldn't have been older than 8. His feet were bright red. Small cuts covered his toes. He hugged himself tightly, trying to stop the shaking. Jack slowly walked toward him. "Hey, buddy." The little boy looked up, frightened. Are you okay?" The boy hesitated before quietly answering. "I'm fine, sir." Jack smiled sadly. "No, son. You're freezing." The boy lowered his head. "My shoes broke 3 weeks ago." Jack looked down. The child wasn't exaggerating. There were old pieces of tape wrapped around one foot where a shoe had once been. The other foot had nothing at all. "Where are your parents?" The boy stayed silent. Jack asked again, "Are you here alone?" After a long pause, the boy whispered, "My mom is sick. She hasn't eaten since yesterday. I'm trying to earn enough money to buy bread." Jack felt something tighten inside his chest. He reached into his pocket. His wallet contained exactly $35. That money was supposed to buy dinner, fuel, and breakfast the next morning. Without it, he wouldn't even have enough to comfortably finish his route. He looked at the boy again, then back at the wallet, then at the gas station convenience store. For a few long seconds, he wrestled with himself. Finally, he smiled. "Come with me." The little boy looked confused. "What?" I said. "Come with me." Inside the small store, Jack ignored the coffee machine he had been dreaming about all day. Instead, he walked directly toward the shoe section. There weren't many choices, just a few pairs of winter boots. He picked one, knelt down, and gently slipped the boots onto the boy's frozen feet. The child couldn't believe it. They're for me." Jack nodded. "They're yours." The boy's eyes filled with tears. He had forgotten what warm feet even felt like. Jack wasn't finished. He grabbed thick wool socks, a warm winter jacket, a knitted hat, gloves. Then he walked toward the cashier. The total flashed on the screen. $34.82. Jack smiled. "That's almost everything I've got." He handed over the money anyway. When the cashier gave him 18 cents in change, that was all the money left in his wallet. He looked at the tiny coins, then laughed softly. "I guess dinner can wait." The little boy suddenly wrapped his arms around Jack. No words, just tears. Jack hugged him back. At that moment, neither of them realized that this hug would connect their lives forever. Jack drove away that night believing he would never see the little boy again. Life on the road had taught him one painful lesson. People came into your life for a moment, then disappeared forever. As the miles rolled beneath his truck, he smiled quietly to himself. For the first time in years, missing a meal didn't bother him. Knowing that one child would sleep with warm feet was enough. Back at the tiny apartment across town, the little boy pushed open the old wooden door. "Mom," his weak voice echoed through the room. His mother slowly opened her eyes from the worn-out couch. She immediately noticed the new boots, then the warm jacket, then the bag of groceries Jack had secretly slipped into the boy's hands before leaving. Tears filled her eyes. "Daniel, where did all this come from?" Daniel knelt beside her. "A truck driver bought them for me." His mother looked shocked. "You don't even know his name?" Daniel slowly shook his head. "No, but he said kindness always finds its way home." She began crying quietly, not because of the gifts, but because after months of suffering, someone had finally treated her son like he mattered. That night, for the first time in weeks, mother and son ate a hot meal together. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Jack's own life wasn't nearly as peaceful. His truck company had been struggling. Fuel prices kept rising. Freight contracts were disappearing. Drivers were losing jobs every week. Jack was already behind on rent. His daughter, Emily, was preparing for college. Every dollar mattered. When Jack arrived home 2 days later, Emily hugged him tightly. "Dad, you're finally home." Jack smiled. "I missed you, kiddo." She immediately noticed something. "Dad, did you lose weight again?" Jack laughed. Road food isn't exactly five-star cooking. But Emily knew better. She had grown up watching her father sacrifice everything for her. Late that evening, while Jack was taking a shower, Emily accidentally saw his wallet lying on the kitchen table. Inside, only 18 cents remained. Her heart sank. When Jack came back, she quietly asked, "Dad, what happened?" Jack hesitated, then smiled. "I met someone who needed that money more than I did." Emily stared at him. "You gave everything away?" Jack nodded. She wrapped her arms around him. "I've always been proud to call you my father." Jack kissed the top of her head. Money comes and goes. Character stays forever. The following weeks became harder. Jack worked longer hours, sometimes driving 16 hours a day, sometimes sleeping inside his truck because he couldn't afford a motel. But strangely, he never regretted helping Daniel. Not even once. Winter slowly turned into spring. Daniel started attending school regularly again. His teachers immediately noticed the difference. He smiled more. He answered questions. He stayed after class to help clean. One afternoon, his teacher stopped him. "Daniel, you've become one of my best students." Daniel smiled. "My mom says one good person can change another person's whole future." The teacher asked, "What made her say that?" Daniel looked down at his boots. "The man who bought these." Years passed. Daniel studied harder than anyone in his class. Every time life became difficult, he remembered the freezing night outside the gas station. He remembered a tired truck driver kneeling in the snow, putting warm boots onto his frozen feet. That memory became fuel. It reminded him that goodness still existed. By high school, Daniel was earning top grades. Scholarships began arriving. Teachers encouraged him to dream bigger. One principal asked, "What do you want to become?" Daniel answered without hesitation, "A doctor." The principal smiled. "Why medicine?" Daniel looked out the classroom window. "Because someone once saved my life, without asking for anything in return. One day, I want to do the same." Meanwhile, Jack grew older. Gray hair slowly replaced the black. The long highways became harder on his body. His knees hurt every morning. His hands shook slightly whenever he gripped the steering wheel. Emily had graduated from college. She had become a school teacher. Jack couldn't have been prouder. One Sunday afternoon, Emily smiled at her father. "Dad, I have a surprise." "What is it?" She held up a small photo. Jack's eyes widened. "A baby?" Emily nodded. "You're going to be a grandfather." Jack laughed through tears. For the first time in years, his heart felt completely full. He looked toward the sky. "Thank you. Life has been good to me." But neither of them knew that within just a few months, everything was about to change. That Emily's pregnancy brought a happiness into Jack's life that he hadn't felt in years. Every long drive suddenly had a purpose. Every mile he traveled, every delivery he completed, every extra shift he accepted, was for his growing family. He began saving every dollar he could. He dreamed about buying a small wooden crib, tiny baby shoes, a rocking chair, and maybe, if life was kind enough, a little house with a white fence where his grandchild could play. One evening, Emily laughed while looking at baby clothes. "Dad, what is it? I think you're more excited than I am." Jack chuckled. "I've waited my whole life for this." Emily squeezed his hand. "You've always taken care of everyone else. Now it's our turn to take care of you." Jack smiled, but deep inside, he knew life rarely stayed peaceful for long. 3 months later, everything changed. It happened on a rainy Friday evening. Emily was driving home after finishing work at the elementary school. The roads were slippery. Visibility was poor. Traffic moved slowly. Suddenly, a speeding pickup truck ignored a red light. The impact was deafening. Metal twisted. Glass exploded across the road. Emily's car spun twice before crashing into a concrete barrier. Within seconds, sirens filled the air. Paramedics rushed toward the wreckage. One firefighter looked inside the crushed vehicle. "We've got a pregnant female. Severe trauma." Another shouted. "Pulse is weak. Move. Move." Jack's phone rang at exactly 6:17 p.m. He answered with a smile. "Hey, sweetheart." Instead, a stranger spoke. "Sir, is this Jack Morgan?" His heart froze. "Yes. I'm calling from St. Mary's Medical Center. Your daughter has been involved in a serious accident." For a moment, Jack couldn't breathe. His legs gave out beneath him. The phone almost slipped from his hand. He whispered, Is she alive? We're doing everything we can. Please come immediately." Jack didn't remember the drive to the hospital. He ran every red light he safely could. His hands trembled so violently that he could barely hold the steering wheel. Over and over, he whispered one prayer. "Please, take anything from me. Just don't take my daughter." When he arrived, doctors and nurses rushed through the emergency entrance. Everything felt chaotic. Stretchers rolled past. Machines beeped constantly. Families cried in every corner. Jack reached the reception desk. "My daughter, Emily Morgan." The nurse quickly checked the computer. "They've taken her directly into emergency surgery." Jack's heart sank. "What about the baby?" The nurse lowered her eyes. "The doctors are trying to save both." Jack slowly collapsed into a waiting room chair. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like days. Every time the operating room doors opened, his heart jumped, but no one called his name. Finally, nearly 4 hours later, a surgeon walked toward him. His surgical mask hung around his neck. His face showed complete exhaustion. Jack immediately stood. "Doctor, please." The young surgeon looked into Jack's eyes. "We managed to stabilize your daughter." Jack burst into tears. "Thank God." But the doctor's expression became serious. "She lost a tremendous amount of blood. The next 24 hours are critical." Jack nodded silently. "And the baby?" The doctor smiled softly. "Your granddaughter is alive." Jack covered his face with both hands. His shoulders shook. He had never cried this hard in his life. The surgeon placed a comforting hand on Jack's shoulder. "She's a fighter, just like her grandfather." Jack looked up. Something about the young doctor's voice felt strangely familiar. Not the face, not the name on the badge, just something impossible to explain. The surgeon extended his hand. "I'm Dr. Daniel Carter." Jack shook it. "Thank you. You saved my family." Daniel smiled gently. "I was only doing my job." But as Daniel turned to leave, his eyes stopped for a split second on Jack's old leather wallet. It was worn, cracked, held together in one corner by a tiny strip of faded gray tape. Daniel froze. A forgotten memory, buried for 15 years, suddenly came rushing back. He slowly turned around again. His heart started beating faster. He stared at Jack, as if trying to solve a mystery that time had hidden for years. Daniel stood frozen in the hallway. His eyes remained fixed on the old leather wallet. The faded strip of gray tape, the worn corners, the tiny scratch across the front. He remembered every detail. His heartbeat became louder. "No," he whispered to himself. "It can't be." Jack noticed the young doctor's expression. "Doctor, is everything all right?" Daniel forced a smile. "Yes. I'm sorry. I just remembered someone." Jack nodded. "Someone special?" Daniel looked away. "The man who changed my life." Before Jack could ask another question, a nurse hurried toward Daniel. "Dr. Carter, ICU needs you immediately." Daniel apologized and rushed away, but his thoughts stayed behind. He couldn't stop seeing that snowy night, the freezing sidewalk, the warm boots, the truck driver who had emptied his wallet without asking for anything in return. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He opened an old wooden box hidden in his apartment closet. Inside, carefully wrapped in soft cloth, was a tiny pair of worn winter boots, the very first real shoes he had ever owned. His mother had kept them for 15 years. Before she passed away, she had placed them into Daniel's hands. "Never throw these away," she had whispered. "They remind us that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes, they drive trucks." Daniel gently smiled through tears. He picked up one boot. Inside, the faded store label was still there, even after all those years. He closed his eyes. "I have to know." Early the next morning, Jack sat beside Emily's hospital bed. Machines quietly beeped around them. Emily was still unconscious. Her newborn daughter rested safely inside the neonatal intensive care unit. Jack looked exhausted. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't slept. All he could do was pray. A soft knock came at the door. Jack looked up. It was Dr. Daniel Carter. Good morning, Mr. Morgan. Jack managed a weak smile. Morning, doctor. Daniel pulled up a chair. Instead of talking about medical reports, he asked something unexpected. Can I ask you a personal question? Jack nodded. Of course. Were you a truck driver 15 years ago? Jack smiled. I still am. Daniel swallowed. Did you ever stop at a small gas station during a snowstorm and buy shoes for a barefoot little boy? Jack frowned. For several seconds, he searched his memory. Then, a small smile appeared. I've helped a lot of people over the years. Daniel reached into his backpack. He carefully placed the tiny old boots on Jack's lap. Jack stared silently. His hands began shaking. His fingers slowly touched the worn leather. His eyes filled with tears. I remember these. Daniel's voice cracked. So do I. Jack looked up. His lips trembled. No. Daniel nodded. I was that little boy. Silence filled the room. Neither man spoke. Neither needed to. 15 years disappeared in a single heartbeat. Jack suddenly stood. Before he could say anything, Daniel hugged him tightly, just like the little boy had done years ago inside the gas station. Only this time, both of them were crying. You saved my life. Daniel whispered. You gave me more than shoes. You gave me hope. Jack wiped away tears. I never imagined. Daniel smiled. You probably forgot about me. Jack laughed softly. I never forgot that night. I just never thought I'd see you again. Daniel looked toward Emily. When I saw your name on the medical chart, I didn't realize who you were. But after I noticed your wallet, something felt familiar. Jack looked confused. My wallet. Daniel smiled. The gray tape. You had the same tape on it that night. Jack laughed through tears. I guess I never replaced it. Both men laughed. The years of pain, distance, and struggle suddenly seemed worth it. Daniel took a deep breath. There is something else you should know. Jack listened carefully. I didn't become a doctor because I wanted success. He looked down at the old boots. I became a doctor because of you. Jack remained speechless. That night, you showed me that complete strangers could choose kindness. I promised myself, if I ever had the chance, I'd spend my life saving people the way you saved me. Jack could no longer hold back his emotions. You've already repaid me. 1,000 times over. Daniel gently shook his head. No, kindness can never truly be repaid. It can only be passed on. Just then, Emily slowly opened her eyes. Dad. Jack rushed to her side. I'm here, sweetheart. Emily smiled weakly. Is my baby okay? Jack nodded with tears in his eyes. She's beautiful. Daniel smiled quietly, looking at the father, the daughter, and the tiny newborn. He realized that one small act of kindness on a freezing winter night had changed 3 generations forever. Daniel stood beside the hospital window, watching the first rays of morning sunlight break through the clouds. For years, he had imagined this moment. He had dreamed about meeting the man who had changed his life. But reality was even more emotional than he had ever expected. Jack gently picked up the tiny boots again. His rough hands trembled as he smiled through tears. I never thought a pair of $35 boots would come back to me after 15 years. Daniel smiled. They never left me. Jack looked surprised. What do you mean? Daniel carefully sat beside him. My mother kept them in a small wooden box. She said they were proof that miracles still happen. Jack lowered his head. I wasn't a miracle. I was just a tired truck driver trying to do the right thing. Daniel slowly shook his head. That's exactly what made you a miracle. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Sometimes, silence carries more meaning than words ever could. A nurse quietly entered the room. Mr. Morgan, would you like to see your granddaughter? Jack's eyes immediately filled with tears. Can I? The nurse smiled. She's waiting for her grandpa. Jack slowly stood. His knees ached from years of driving across America. His back hurt. His shoulders felt heavy. But in that moment, he felt 20 years younger. Inside the neonatal intensive care unit, a tiny baby girl slept peacefully inside her warm crib. Her tiny fingers were no bigger than Jack's thumb. He gently reached inside. The little girl wrapped her tiny hand around his finger. Jack completely broke down. He whispered, Hi, sweetheart. I'm Grandpa. Daniel stood quietly behind him, watching, smiling, remembering another little child, standing barefoot in the snow. Life had come full circle. A few hours later, Emily was finally strong enough to meet her daughter. Jack carefully carried the baby into the room. Emily smiled through happy tears. She's beautiful. Jack nodded. She has your smile. Emily noticed Daniel standing near the door. Dad, who's the doctor? Jack looked toward Daniel. For several seconds, he couldn't speak. Finally, he smiled. This isn't just a doctor. He's family. Emily looked confused. Jack slowly told her the entire story. About the freezing winter night. The barefoot little boy. The last $35. The warm boots. Daniel quietly listened as tears rolled down Emily's face. When Jack finished, Emily looked directly at Daniel. So, you're the little boy my father always wondered about. Daniel nodded. And your father became the reason I never gave up. Emily reached for his hand. Thank you for saving my daughter. Daniel smiled gently. I only returned the kindness that your father gave me years ago. News of the incredible reunion slowly spread throughout the hospital. Doctors, nurses, patients. Everyone wanted to hear the story. Many couldn't believe it. Some cried. Others hugged complete strangers after hearing what had happened. One elderly nurse quietly whispered, "This is why kindness matters. You never know where it will return." A week later, Emily and her baby were finally discharged from the hospital. Before leaving, Jack asked Daniel one final question. Son, can I ever repay you? Daniel smiled. You already did. 15 years ago. Jack laughed. You know, I almost didn't stop that night. Daniel looked surprised. Really? Jack nodded. I was exhausted, hungry, almost out of money. For a second, I thought about driving away. Daniel looked into his eyes. But you didn't. Jack smiled. No, something told me to stop. Daniel quietly answered. That decision gave me a future. Outside the hospital, the snow had begun to fall once again, just like 15 years earlier. Jack looked up at the sky, then at Daniel, then at his granddaughter sleeping peacefully in Emily's arms. He realized something beautiful. Kindness never disappears. It simply travels through time, until one day, it finds its way back home. As Jack hugged his daughter, Daniel, and the tiny little girl, he smiled with a full heart. The little boy who once stood barefoot in the freezing snow had grown into the man who saved his family, and the truck driver who once believed his last $35 were gone forever discovered they had become the greatest investment of his entire life. Because a single act of kindness can echo across generations, changing lives in ways we may never imagine.